This is Full Coffers with your host, Phil and Toni Buggs from Abundant Harvest Christian Fellowship Ministries.
And this week on Full Coffers, The Journey, Part 23. Well, we're back. I still haven't figured out an intro yet, but maybe by the time it's all said and done, I'll find one.
It'll be too late.
Yeah, I know. Anywho, last we left off, Philip Sr. was talking about God's disruption of his particular journey in the ministry. But I want to kind of go back a little bit because we did talk about the last time Philip confessing to cocaine use in June of 2007.
And this is Junior.
Exactly. Yes. Funny guy. And he was able to rehabilitate himself where he was able to get back into the service, and he was able to get on a plane in August of 2007 and go to Fort Benning, Georgia to begin his basic training. Now, 2006. I want to go back now. I want to go back to June 2006 because when Philip disclosed to us...
Junior.
This is not going to work. When Philip Jr. disclosed to us his drug addiction, something else was going on with Philip Sr. in June of 2006.
That's true. I was given a calling from God in terms of what he wanted me to do as a minister of the gospel. And in my mind, the only thing I knew about the ministry was what I had been accustomed to, being raised in a Black Baptist church. I figured that was the road that God was going to lead me on and in this quest. But I found out that was not the course that he had laid out for me. From my frustration and discontent with the church life that I had been doing, and God disrupting that word by having me give water and bananas to homeless people, and to start to open my eyes to a world that happened on Sundays where I was normally in church, to a world that was happening that God wanted his influence to be felt in that community. So he set me on a course to engage homeless people, and it did. It opened my eyes to, first of all, dissuade the myth that homeless people are folk who just are deadbeats and they don't want to do anything.
Right.
To recognizing that a lot of homeless people, I'm not a large percentage, but there was a considerable percentage of them who just checked out because of the problems they were having in life. Some of them was on the course of trying to reunite with family that they had lost. And so there was a whole, what I thought about homelessness was debunked, and God set me on a course of new compassion for people that he had compassion for. It's the people, I won't go there because I would get too biblical, talking about Jesus and the festival and the people that he called in. But honestly, that was the people God was calling me to minister to. And I felt comfortable doing that. And so it took me on a course from feeding homeless people downtown to, we'll get a building. Here, Philip had a thought. And that thought was, we need a church. And so we
had the model of the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir. And because
that's all we knew.
If you understand the history behind the Brooklyn Tabernacle, it was composed or comprised of homeless individuals who were formerly drug users, prostitutes, and they came together to build this beautiful community of people helping each other, telling each other about the gospel. So Toni had a thought that, we can do that on the West Coast. So we rented a facility on Sundays, and we would lay out breakfast, because we said, well, we got to feed the people because, in order to get the word, you got to feed them physically so they can get the word spiritually. Oh, we had this all planned out really well. Opened up the doors, crickets.
Crickets. Week after week of food that we would end up taking home.
Yep.
Crickets.
That saying, build it and they will come, that's a lie. So we had to come together to re-strategize, and God laid it on Philip's heart. In that neighborhood where that center was, there was a community that it was kind of rough.
It was, no, not kind of. Take the kind of out of it. These were really some hardened street-walking individuals. They were street-living people, whether it was homeless, whether it was prostitution, whether it was drugs and alcohol. Mind you, we came from, if I say lily white,
Pollyanna.
I mean, we had no clue, and I'm very inclusive in terms of Toni and I.
Well,
in this
I had
ministry.
an Uncle Ray Ray, but we didn't talk about him much.
Every family has had an Uncle Ray Ray. Tony's was a little bit more visible, or no, more. They were open. On my side of the family, we were more so, we just didn't talk about those cousins. Y'all know what I'm talking about. But with that, we were welcomed into that community. And I think largely because...
Briefly, and I'm sorry to cut in, briefly, the introduction consisted of Philip was led to the house that the big guy hung out with, if you can read between the lines, and Philip actually had to be escorted in the neighborhood so that they wouldn't blow his head off when he's walking down the street with a Bible in his hand.
Yeah, she set the stage very well because I did. In my if I say innocence in terms of ministry, I was just about sharing Christ. And so we had purchased some Bibles, some cheap Bibles, and I had about 5 or 6 of them under my arm, and I would park on the street in a very seedy area of Phoenix, and I got out of my Explorer at the beginning of the block, and I started walking down the street, and I had met a couple people, and then this house across the street, this guy was on the porch, and I saw him from a distance looking at me. Now, mind you, I grew up in Detroit. I wasn't completely inept to what was happening, but I was just, I'm about God's work. So, Lord, help me. And
Cover him, Jesus.
and it's amazing the way God worked, because this fella came off the porch, and he says, "What are you doing?" And I says, "I'm just out giving out Bibles and inviting people to Sunday get breakfast at this place that a lot of folk knew very well in the community." And he says, "Wait just a minute. I need to walk with you down the street." And didn't know that. And I honestly believe, just like when we were traveling out to Phoenix and an angel met us at that travel center when our brakes blew out on our trailer, I truly believe God sent him, whether it was a Jedi mind trick to get him off that porch or whatever. But he walked with me, and he introduced me to everybody on that block. And in fact, there was another block we went down, and I found out there's one house on the block that was like the key house, and everybody knew it, and they knew the person, and he really ran things. So this person that I was with introduced me to that individual, and so it's like God gave me an inroad, and the first presence of God in that neighborhood. I wouldn't say the first, because there were churches around as well, but the ministry God was calling me to. He gave me an inroad in with people, and I became accepted in that neighborhood. When they saw Reverend Bugs or Minister Bugs, I was cool. And so it was interesting, the type of people that God opened my eyes to. I must admit, Phoenix is very hot and very bright because there's sun. I went into some houses, and the friend that was with me, he says, wait right here. And I was in the house. Honestly, when I went in that house, it was as if it was midnight. I mean, there was no light anywhere. And eventually I saw a couple people come out, and we would engage and just talking. It wasn't like I was preaching scriptures or anything. I said, "Hey, I'm Minister Bugs, and we have this place down here. We'd love to have you come and have breakfast on Sunday with us. Yes, I give a message, but we just opening up and just sharing the faith with you. And with that, I continue my journey, and that person took me to several places. I must admit, there was this one other place, and I will get away from there. But if you all saw the cartoon, The Flintstones, and you saw Fred Flintstone's house, I kid you not. There was a river, I guess I know it called River Rock, that this house was built out of river rock.
It was called the Rock
It
House.
was called the Rock House. It really was. And sat off in a distance. It wasn't even at the top front of the lot. It was just the only house in like 2 or 3 lots. And I went in there. And again, just the presence of God just covered me. And how do I know that? It was just a presence that you can't explain. You just know it's there. No harm came to me. No harm came to individuals. And as a result of that encounter, that one time, on Sundays, we were able to feed people at this center. And it changed how I looked at what God looks at when he sees people. He doesn't see these throwaways. He doesn't see these people who have to meet certain criteria in order. He just sees people that need love, and he's charged us to be that love conduit by which he can then do the work that only God can do in a person's life.
And for me, it was a hard assignment because every single Sunday we got up. Philip went to the grocery store to get the breakfast items. I would set up on the inside. I'd set the chairs up. And then after that, he would go out literally in the neighborhood calling out, saying, this is Pastor Phil or this is Minister Bugs. Come to the center and have breakfast.
Yeah.
The thing that got me the most, though, is that when these individuals came into this center, it wasn't a church, didn't look nothing like a church, but when they came in, the first thing they would ask us, can we go in the bathroom and wash up? Now, here are people who have been out on the street all week long, didn't really care where they were, what they did, but when they came in, the first thing they wanted to do is clean up.
And it's interesting because some may think, well, they want to clean up because they've been out in the streets. They just want to go to a bathroom. But they would say that we are coming into, I think they said the house or the house of God or the church, and they just wanted to clean up.
They wanted to be
If
clean.
nothing else, there was a reverence for God that was known amongst people who they could teach some churchgoers that I used to go
Definitely.
with. They could teach them a lesson about the reverence and respect and the honor you should have for the house of God.
Exactly.
It was an attitude of humility, of just thank you for welcoming us and loving on us. And we didn't hold back the hugs. We didn't hold back. And
exactly.
Because street folk can smell a rat a mile away, which is why, even though that neighborhood was covered with churches, it's interesting how they were not invited.
That's a good indication when you have a fence around a church, and it kind of tells you, But the other thing that we was able to do is once a month, we were able to get donations for hygiene items. And every first Sunday, we would pass out things for women, men hygiene, and they appreciated it so much. Now, a little funny note to it, we were still in the learning process, so Philip would prepare a sermon about 20, 30 minutes long. But we found out we found out really soon when someone who hasn't slept in several days and they come in and eat a nice, good breakfast
in a warm facility.
You better not have a sermon over 10 minutes because literally people were falling out the chair. They were sleeping.
We literally had one guy literally fall out of the chair. And he was so sorry. But all that to say that, again, God is teaching me how I need to change how I represent him, how I represent Scripture. It isn't to break it down, or it isn't to dilute what we're saying, but it has been concentrated form. It's sort of like nowadays, commercials are like 5 seconds or 10 seconds.
Yep.
Literally, sermons, 5 minutes at the most. and you got to get it jam-packed and stay focused and let those people go.
I always said that before anyway,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. I went,
So, it was just an exciting time
yeah,
because we were learning something. You take a page out of Jesus's journey, when he came here and the people he interacted with and talked to, and, things that most people would just put their nose up at, but he had us down in the field working, and
yeah,
it was just an exciting time and things were going on.
yeah,
Now, to kind of come back a little bit, talking about our son had been in the service now for a while. He passed basic training, went to extended training. We went to his graduation. We were proud. He was stationed Fort Riley, Kansas. He had gotten a car with his bonus money, and it seemed as if Philip was doing good. And I
and
used the word
it
seemed.
seemed, yeah, yeah,
But I won't get into all of the details. But unfortunately, because of Philip coming back to base late, other things, he was given an article.
he was actually given in military terms, 4 Article 15s, and in fact, it put him on a course to be discharged from the military again.
And eventually
He was, yeah,
He
yep,
was.
late 2007.
So again, I'm not going to go into all of the detail behind that. There's more to come about Philip. But also during this time, because this was like in 2007, I would hear something, as most other people did, on the news about something called a housing bubble.
Yes.
I didn't know what the heck a housing bubble was. It's like it's a bubble with houses on it. Is that a snow globe? What is this?
Is it a security system for your house?
Exactly. And I'd be listening to news talk radio, and it talked about this housing bubble. And then like in 2008, it was becoming more prevalent. There was always two versions. Yeah. One professional says, oh, there's no such thing as a housing bubble. Another professional says, it's coming. And we started to see some changes in the state of Florida where houses were literally going up for foreclosure left and right.
Yep.
Now, I'm not going to pretend to be a financial expert because I'm not. But I was a little concerned because the big thing during that time was these lenders were giving these loans out. If you were breathing, you got a loan despite whether or not you could afford the house or not.
Yep.
And so it seemed as if it was some type of plague. You remember Moses and the Ten Commandments, and that hand was coming across, the angel of death? Well, it started on the East Coast, but it was slowly making its way toward the West Coast. And we found ourselves in 2009 in the bubble bursting.
Exactly.
The things that the experts had talked about and forecasted happened. And as a result, as you all know, people were put into these homes that they could not afford. And so Philip and I were looking at some things, and we made some adjustments financially with our loan, the house that we had built. And, we were making it. And so one fateful day, however, in March
of 2009, I got called into my shop foreman's office. He says, hey, Phil, the company is going through a downturn, and we're not getting the business that we used to get, and we're going to have to downsize. And unfortunately, as a part of that engineering department, we're going to have to let you go.
Wow.
That sting, that cold slap had started, and I called Toni after packing up my box.
Well, actually, Philip has a way of
oh yeah, that's right. I forgot. I did
keeping things from me until the right time, and I had to do something, and I got home kind of late.
Yeah.
And it was a Friday night,
Yep.
and normally on Friday nights we have pizza.
Yep.
And so I had come in and settled down, got changed and everything, and I was sitting down for dinner, and I started to eat that first slice of pizza, and I got that down pretty well.
And Toni loves pizza, by the way, people.
More than anything else.
Yeah, I learned something about that, too, that night.
And so we're having a conversation. Yep. How's your day? Looking forward to the weekend. And all of a sudden,
Yep. I said, hey, I got let go from my job today.
And that second slice of pizza didn't go down so well.
I don't think we ate any more pizza that night.
No.
Because it devastated us because we lost 75% of our income in that house. I was the major, for at that time, and what are we going to do? How are we going to make it?
My
And
job,
yeah,
although it was pretty solid, it was still solid, but it could not take care of it couldn't even take care of the mortgage. Now,
yeah,
again, mind you, before the bubble, we did some financial rearranging so that
right,
we would be in a safe place.
right.
But our mortgage then was still
Yes,
$2,200.
yes,
I mean, that is probably all I could pay for out of my salary, but to have 75% of your income wiped out
yep,
in one day with the housing crisis,
yeah.
what are we going to do?
It definitely impacted our lives. And this is '09.
Oh, nine. And there was no playbook at that time.
No, no, there wasn't.
Everybody was trying to scratch and claw. What do we do?
Yeah,
What do we
exactly,
do?
exactly.
And, you hear certain things on the news all the time. You're trying to figure out what to do. You calling your bank, because at that time we were with Countrywide, and we know what happened to them, and so it was tumultuous. And
Yes,
so from March up
until mid
until
June.
mid-June,
Mid June, yeah,
we were trying to scramble
yep.
to figure out, and mind you, we were dipping in our savings account
Seriously,
to
yep,
pay for our mortgage, because at the end of the day, we said we made this commitment.
yep,
We're going to pay our mortgage. We're not going to, because most people were just jumping ship.
yeah, yeah. They
And we said
were
we're not going to do that.
right. So we stayed the course in terms of paying our commitment, but by June, we had really depleted our
Yep.
savings, and it's like, okay, do we pay the mortgage, or do we keep this in order to make a move? And at that time, Tony was more in tune with where we were financially and recognized we can't keep this house.
I mean, the bank even told us, well, you got to be 3 payments
Yeah,
behind
yeah,
before you could get any
that,
help from
yeah.
us. I said, what sense does that make?
You can't help me until we go into foreclosure.
Yes.
But if I say we digress for a second, but with that, Tony had made up in her mind we can't keep the house.
We had exhausted everything. I mean, we did everything.
Yeah.
We went to these conferences where we would literally fill out 50 pages of documents. We would sit and wait 4 or 5 hours to see a representative,
Just
only
to
for
be
them
told.
to tell us,
Yep.
well, there's really not anything we can do until you're in default.
Yep, yep,
And so I had decided by June,
yeah,
this is it.
yeah.
This is it.
And for the first time, we chose not to pay the mortgage. That we saved the money because we needed to have something, because we knew we had to move.
And I know it was hard for you.
It was harder for me because I didn't really believe that the house that God gave us, this house, I'm sure He wants us to keep it. That was me. And Toni had settled in her mind, we can't keep the house. If I say long story short, we ended up having to short sell the house.
Yeah.
And that was only after God and I had this conversation. And,
And the statement that he made to you,
after I pleaded my case on why I know you don't want us to give up this house, and then God had to take me through the history. Say, hey, how much money did you put into this house? And I had to $600. So who bought the house? You did. He says, and then can't I do what I want with what I own? And for me, that went way past the house, because as a child of God, He owns me too. And I had to admit or submit to the idea that I had to give up the house. And so that's what we did. We
and
short sold.
it hurt.
It
hurt.
hurt
I,
tremendously. Yeah.
even though I had made up in my mind, the numbers are not adding up. We cannot continue to bleed.
No.
And it hurt.
Yeah.
But we had to get a realtor.
Yep.
And she said, we're going to have to short sell it.
Yep.
And we're talking short sell.
Yeah.
It came nowhere close to what we owed
Pennies
on the
on
home.
the dollar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And fortunately, Philip couldn't buy a job on the West Coast.
No. I will share this, that with the house, a good thing, because we were in Arizona, since it was our primary residence and first home that we purchased out here, we didn't have to come up with the balance
The deficiency.
the deficiency. In Arizona, there was a forgiveness the
Yes.
first time. So
Yes.
what the house sold for took us out of that completely. Now, this is how God works in our particular case. And then the second thing was that I actually got a call from one of my old customers back in Tennessee and asked me what I was doing. I says, I'm looking for a job. You got one? He says, how much do you need? You know, this is again when you look in the camera and you're saying, okay, where's the
can't be
trick? This
happening.
can't be happening. But literally, I was given a job back in Tennessee, and he gave me money to move back to Tennessee. So from the money we were able to save, coupled with that, and again, people, this is how God worked in our lives at that time. We lost the house, but God still provided for us.
And the thing I don't want to marginalize is the hurt
Yes.
we felt.
Yes. Yes.
No, by no way did I say,
Yeah.
oh, okay, we'll just go on to that. No.
I was broken. I mean, because I really thought, but to have that realization, the hurt of packing up the house.
And then having to, that final thing we
Yes.
did was we vacuumed the carpet.
Yep.
We put the vacuum cleaner in the back of our car.
Yep.
And we prayed because we had to drive from Arizona
Yep. Back to
to
Tennessee.
Tennessee. Now, for those of you who listen to Hemorrhoids and Highways, we got a professional mover this time. So we ain't giving a hemorrhoid. No trailer, none of that nonsense. We had an extra. But when we closed that door for the final time, we thought we would never return.
Yep.
And we were, like Philip said, we were broken.
Yes.
Because
yes.
that home was the healing place. We had people stay with us. We had church out of there
We
sometimes.
had some weddings out of there.
Exactly.
Yes.
And we could not understand, Lord,
Why? Yeah.
why is this happening
Yep.
to us?
Yep.
So I guess, though, you'll have to tune in next time to figure out what happened to Toni and Philip when they had to leave Phoenix, Arizona in October 2009.
Yep.
I don't know what October. Every time we move, every time we got
it's
married,
October.
What is that? What does Octo mean?
I am not sure. I don't know if we'll come up with an answer to that, but this journey that we're going through right now, it definitely, again, we're in the midst of the wilderness years, and still we got Phil Jr. and we got Kyle. Still, we focus on us a lot in this segment, but believe me,
we ain't done yet, man.
Yeah. There is Jaws music playing in the background that he's about dun dun. Believe me, it's like they're still lurking about.
Yes. But but hopefully you take away from this is that there's a scripture that came to mind is that God gives, God take away, but blessed be the name of the Lord.
I think that came from Job.
You caught that, didn't you?
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Some people throw these things. Oh, that's scripture. No, you look Job up when everything was taken from him, and his wife came in complaining. Present company excluded. He said, "Are we only to expect good things from the Lord?" He makes this statement: "The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away." And this is King James. Mm-hmm. Blessed be the name of the Lord. That is really the mark of someone who has put their whole lives in the hand of God, is that they trust Him with everything.
Everything.
And that is what we want to, hopefully, again, it isn't hanging on Job's coattail as much as it is.
No, I got my own coattail to hang on to.
Trust me, God.
I don't need Job.
God built each of us a coat with a coattail.
You got it.
There's a chat attached to Him. So that is what this is about. This is about losing, yet not losing.
That's right.
We have to learn to wear this physical world. We got to wear it loosely. What's more important is our spiritual connected to the God of creation that is able to give, able to take away, and as you'll learn in later episode, oh Lord, like Job was given back sevenfold, God isn't limitless with that. He replaced, but as my daughter would say, Dad, don't give it away. Okay, daughter dear, I hear you. I won't give it away.
All
Stay
right.
tuned, though. Please have a wonderful rest of your week.
Till next time.
This episode was produced and edited by Miss K. Simone. Cover graphics by Indefinite. Music by Miss K. Simone. So until next time, I'm Phil Bugs.
And I'm Toni Bugs.
Wishing you a wonderful week.